Journey with Judy.
Honest, open, transparent. It's hot.
There's no such thing as perfect people. There's no such thing as a perfect life. So come as you are, broken and scarred. Lift up your heart and be amazed and be changed by a perfect God.
Okay, so broken and scarred, that's the way he came. That's the way he came to the cross. And are you happy that we're celebrating Easter and your host is already bawling her eyes out? It's been said that I only have one good week of the month. I got like your premenstrual, postmenstrual, and the actual menstrual. And so like one good week you can catch me and things are really good. Except for this week. This week that we just celebrated, that was so the most holiest week of the year. I wasn't probably acting so holy, but I am never more mindful of how desperately I need a Savior as we celebrate this week and journey with Jesus. And my kids were kind of angry because they were annoyed that they weren't getting the response that they wanted from me, which said, like, you know what, this week we'll go to church. Because in our faith denomination, we celebrate Holy Thursday, Good Friday, the Easter Vigil, and Sunday. And so they were trying to get out of going to church. And they do that whole thing like, do we have to? And I say, no, we get to. We get to celebrate Holy Thursday, the Last Supper with Jesus. We get to celebrate his passion on Good Friday. And our little family tradition is my kids' friends come over and watch the Passion with us. And it's so awesome to watch these young men see firsthand what it is that Jesus did for them. And I always try to say, would you do that for one another? Would you die for each other as teammates, as friends, as buddies? Because I know I wouldn't die for my kids, even though I say I would. Okay, so I'm going to stop crying soon. Anyway, then today, Sunday, we go to the nursing home and pass out Easter eggs and celebrate the fact that Jesus has risen from the dead. Because our faith is in vain if this part didn't happen. Dave just said to me, is this more important than Christmas? Yeah, it's way more important, because if he didn't rise, then he didn't conquer death and sin and all the things that hold us captive from being all that God calls us to be. So we totally celebrate that he is risen from the dead. And we look to him as the example of why we're not supposed to be angry. Like, what's there to possibly be angry about? We watch Jesus be beaten, betrayed, be belittled, and badgered. What did he do? He rose above it. And we're called to do the same, and I'm totally digging that. So anyway, I don't know if you know this, but when Jesus died on the cross, it was common in those days that the Roman soldiers would place above the crucifix where he was crucified something that person would be recognized for. And so for those of you who don't know, there's an INRI above a crucifix. And what that means was Jesus of Nazareth, King of the Jews. And they placed that up there really in a way of ridiculing him, like, here he is, Jesus of Nazareth, King of the Jews. And I got to tell you, if I was nailed to a cross today, they would have to put above it AMP. I'll tell you what that means and why that is when we get back. You are listening to Journey with Judy right here, Easter Sunday on Lake 96.1. We'll be back. I totally love that song. It is so fun, and it is such a great, good morning. And I'm totally digging that. But I got to clarify two things. Number one, I said I would like to think I would die for my children. But the reality is I am so self-centered and selfish. I don't know that I would when it came right down to it. So that's just truth being told, because we are honest, open, and transparent. And here's a tidbit. This INRI, I never heard it said. Dave just imparted some profound wisdom upon me that it stands for I never regretted it. And I'm totally digging that, because I regret when I'm angry all the time, every time. And I know that Jesus did not regret that he died on the cross. So anyway, here above my cross, above my broken and scarred brutally mutilated body, they would have to put AMP. And that would stand for anger management problem. Which I totally regret almost all the time, every time. So, like, the fact of the matter is, I am so desperately in need of a Savior, and I thank God that He sent His one and only Son to be that for me this day, Easter Sunday. So I got to share with you, like, maybe you don't have the same issues as me, but my top 10 signs of needing a Savior. And let's be honest, if you can relate. Number 1, are you a yeller? Number 2, have you ever surprised yourself by how angry you got or what you did when you were angry? How about, do you get angry when you're interrupted? How about when you have to wait? I get really angry when I feel that I'm criticized. I get angry when I say things that I later regret. And you know what? Honestly, most of my problems have to do with the way you're acting, because you're not saying, being, and doing who I need you to say, be, and do at any given point in time. And sometimes I find it really difficult to overlook your mistakes. Been told that I overreact. That's that whole over the top, Mom, you're so legitimate freak show. You always are losing it and you're seriously psycho. I definitely get angry or impatient when there is not enough time to do what I've already determined has to be done, that I want to get done, and that makes me angry. And so those are the top 10 signs that I have an anger management problem. I'd like to consider myself at 46 years of age, a woman who is in control. But if my kids say I'm irrational, infantile, and intense, I don't know that that is synonymous with being in control. I told you what my son Chandler says when he walks in a room. What's wrong with you? My daughter Kennedy usually says she's mad again. We got to recap a little bit of last week's show for those of you who didn't hear it, and for those of you who did, bear with me because we'll get to the meat of the show in just a couple minutes. I talked about how my man and I went to Mexico. Every desire was met, every expectation exceeded. The bad news was nobody mistook me for a Christian, just a self-righteous witch. I was angry by definition, just being like irritated and anxious. And I decided that the place for me, and my man did agree, that a cloistered convent, when they shovel the last scoop of dirt on him, is where I need to be. Because I can honestly tell you that I found more peace in serving at my church's fish fries every week of Lent for 4 hours on a Friday night than I found getting every one of my physical needs tended to in Cancun, Mexico, without any kids saying, Mom, drive me here, do this, do that, can I have this, can I have that? So why is that? Well, the fact of the matter is I will always teach on the things that I most need to learn. And I got some issues. So my anger recap: be angry, but sin not. This thing about anger is it's considered one of the 7 deadly sins because it goes against love of neighbor. It's just an emotional response telling us that we are dissatisfied, period, with a person, a place, a situation that did not go the way we have already decided. This is so funny. We've already decided the way it's going to go. And so when it doesn't, we have an issue with it. Here's the other thing, is it's a distorted desire to correct or punish, to over-rebuke or over-correct. See, it starts within, but it doesn't always stem outside because it's expressed in 2 ways. Either it's suppressed or expressed. And what we perceive is what makes us so angry. It's not what another person, place, or thing is doing. It's how we perceive it within. Because we see things as we are, fact, and not as they are. And some of us want to go like, I lost my temper. You can't lose it because you don't have one. And when we say we lost it, it's just really honestly an excuse to say, I'm not willing to change. And here's the deal, like the name of the show is You're Pushing My Buttons Part 2. You don't have any. You do not have any buttons. People cannot provoke you to an emotional response with the exception of self-defense. And the thing that we're trying to do is control people or get them to do something that we want them to do. And the fact of the matter is we lose our power when we badger and blow. So you got to get the mantra, low and slow. There's a difference in righteous anger and sinful anger. See, righteous anger is when you are acting on behalf of another human being's well-being because they've been abused or violated or neglected in some way, or you're acting on behalf of God. That's what Jesus did. Sinful anger is when you are compromising the dignity of another person. See, anger says you owe me something. And it's so not neutral. It has huge implications. It definitely doesn't motivate. If anything, it alienates. It is the opposite of loving. We are called to do two things: to love God and love our neighbor as ourselves. And let me just tell you that love is just bearing with another person all of their defects. It's being inspired by the least of their virtues and never being shocked by the worst of their weaknesses. So why do we get angry? Which is just being annoyed or irritated. We can't be ignoring, excusing, and minimizing this. We got to name it. We got to tame it. But how? I'll tell you when we get back. You are listening to Journey with Judy right here on Lake 96.1, and thanks to the Cunis Country Auto Group for sponsoring our show. We'll be back. And if you're curious, the song coming in out of the break is Mandisa. It's a good morning. You're so not a singer. And this is Rascal Flatts playing My Wish. And if you want to hear them playing it, you can hear them at Summerfest on June 27th. Is that right? Yes, that is right. And I dig that. And what they're saying is that life becomes all that you want it to. And that somebody loves you. We got to know that. And especially when it comes to this thing about anger, we got to learn to unlearn what it is that makes us react in this way, which is the opposite of peace. And here's the deal, like, we have two kinds of anger. Some of it's conditioned anger. It's rooted in past, conscious or unconscious. It's just rooted in something that maybe we're not even aware of. But we relive that unresolved conflict every time it's triggered. And the other kind of anger is deadly anger. It's like rage at the slightest provocation. It's like having a predisposition to erupting. You know, my man always uses the example. We have anger issues in our house. We all should have this AMP, anger management problem, or anger management problem, posted above us. But here's the fact is that our past might explain it, but it doesn't excuse it. And I love Bob's analogy. He's like, you know what, babe? It's just like a pot that you were watching for minutes. You could be watching it for 10 minutes and it's never boiling. You turn your head for 1 second and it boils over. And I love that analogy that he gives because it's so true. But we're so not called to live that way, no matter how much we have been disrespected, shamed, blamed, rejected, neglected, or hurt in some way that would cause anger to be the justified response. We just watched this for the last week, and especially for the last 3 days. We had a forerunner to look at and say, how do you respond? What would Jesus do? Not what would he do, what did he do? What did he do when someone pressed his buttons? When he realized it was happening? And when he had that window of choice and time before he acted, what did he do? You see, he did what I couldn't do when I was in Mexico and what I don't do on a regular basis. Because I make a decision or made a decision to respect you, revere you, reflect to you, and resurrect in you only what's good. But I know that I can't do that unless I do it through him, with him, and in him. Because in him, through him, and with him, we can do all things. Successfully handling anger is expressing yourself in a way that your behavior doesn't become the focus of attention. That happens all the time in my world. And it's when we love God the way we're supposed to be loving him, because that's all Jesus did. Like, his love for his dad made him respond the way he did, because he had a bigger picture in mind. And he knew that those people saw things the way they were and not the way, we see things the way we are, and that's the way they did. Last week, on 2 occasions, I charged my cell phone. And on 2 occasions, by like 8 in the morning, after turning it on at 6, it was dead. And I said to Bob, something must be wrong with the phone. And he always says the same thing. It's the operator. That means it's me. And that could definitely make me angry. But the fact of the matter is, both times, I realized after I went over to, Bob was trying to help me figure out what was wrong. And here's the deal. I had plugged the plug into the phone, but asked me where it wasn't plugged into. It's not even funny, because I'm blonder than I pay to be, and then this is just another way that my family can ridicule and persecute, disrespect, shame, and blame me for everything. But it wasn't plugged in, and I said to my man, I could do a show on that. I could do a show on how something can't function for any extended period of time the way it's supposed to, unless it's properly plugged in. And that's my message today, is that we are so in need of a Savior to be all that we're supposed to be, to have this life that Rascal Flatts talked about, that it becomes all that we want it to be. So how do we do it? Gosh, we got to admit that we have an issue, that we have an AMP. And we got to apologize when we blow it. We got to ask God. It's the AAA club. I'm going to admit it. I'm going to apologize for it. And I'm going to ask God. I'm going to ask him to fill every space and every place that I have that's angry because of something I think you owe me, regardless of what it is. And I'm going to say, Lord, please fill me in a way that I can admire, adapt, accept, and affirm. And this is no different than any other thing you're doing in your life. Practice makes perfect. And it is so a journey and not a destination. Every time I don't react the way I normally would, I know that is God's grace changing my heart. And I always feel so much better when I do it the way Jesus would do it, and not the way I feel justified to do it. Because everything that's exposed becomes illuminated. And then we can deal with it. And the only way we can do that is loving God. And out of that love for God, it causes our heart to expand. And it causes us to love without cost or without measure. And then we're fed by the ability to serve him and sacrifice for someone else. What's there to be angry about? Go ahead. Push my buttons. And for those of you who are feeling condemned by the message today, that is so not a message from God. He wants you to feel empowered. He wants you to feel encouraged. And the analogy I'm going to leave you with when it comes to anger is I want you to take a quarter and put it on the table. I want you to look at that quarter in comparison to the size of the room that you're in. And I want you to know more than ever on this Easter Sunday that God's love is the size of that room. And when it comes to the way he looks at you in terms of this anger management problem, keep it in perspective, friends, because it is just about the size of that quarter in proportion to the love he has for you, the size of the room. Do not ever lose sight of that. So I pray that you're going to admit, you're going to apologize, and you're going to ask God so you can walk in the light of his love. We'll be back. You're listening to Journey with Judy right here on Lake. All right, this Easter Sunday, I am praying that you admire, that you adapt, that you accept and you affirm, and that even includes the creasters, the people that are only at church this time, this Sunday. Make a difference. Make room for them. Make them feel welcome. And when it comes to your anger, admit it. Don't absolve it. Confess it. Don't condone it. He is risen, and there is absolutely nothing to be angry about. Have a blessed Easter. Stay tuned. Life Matters is next with Faith and Nancy. And this week, keep it hot, honest, open, and transparent. Peace out.